Ga.
Eh?
You said to say ga. Get it? The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem. G'day and welcome to episode 76 of the Gaming Lovers Podcast. I'm Jem.
I'm Brendo. The Gaming Lovers are here, back with a jam-packed episode of 16-bit goodness this week.
Oh yeah.
I have been gifted the wonderful gift that was gifted my way from my gift-giving wife. Last week, anniversary week, Sega Mega Drive Mini, my hot little hands, and we have been road testing all 40 plus 2 games, according to the box. 40 plus 2, because there's 2 special bonus games. But I've tried them all, and we're here this week to give quite a bit of input, bit of rankings, which games are trash tier. I'll give you a little heads up. There are quite a few that are trash tier.
Yeah.
It is the unfortunate thing when games came out like almost 30 years ago. There's going to be some that have not aged well at all, but they still have historic value and importance. And so I still love them because I've been a Sega boy for many years.
We're going to get to that a little later on in this episode. Right now it is time for...
Gaming goals. We'll just stick with the Sega theme. Every segment will have a Sega style introduction.
So what have you been up to this week aside from the whole Sega Mega Drive Mini?
Not a lot, to be honest. I've been playing Persona Q2 on my Nintendo 3DS, making some good progress there. Almost done with the third world, and I don't know what happened, but I'm really enjoying it at the moment.
Nice.
It was a game that I could only seem to play for a little bit before it started to outwear its welcome, and maybe I've just found the right size sessions to play that. The Persona Q2 game has the cast from Persona 3 Portable. Hello, female protagonist. Persona 4, Persona 5, all jam-packed together, dungeon exploration in the style of the Etrian Odyssey games, and I have been enjoying it. I've been playing on easy, and occasionally, just occasionally, still get my butt handed to me by enemies and bosses. So, tough stuff.
Is that all?
Pretty much. Like, you only gave me 42 games to play in a week.
Well, I figured that you'll cover that pretty much for the rest of the episode, so...
Yeah, but that covered most of my available time outside of watching Netflix with you or being at work or family obligations. There's a lot to do in life, and when you have 42 games to sample, 42, also known as 40 plus 2, that takes up a lot of my gaming time. So it has been a light week. I did, however, play one other game.
Which was that?
Myself and my good buddy the Falcon working our way through Silent Hill 4, The Room. And can't say we've really enjoyed our time with that game as much as we'd hoped. We've found some very interesting things. We have been working through the entire Silent Hill series in recent months. Silent Hill 4 did not start off development as a Silent Hill game. It was moved into that franchise at a later date. But the level design is terrible. We're playing on hard. It is quite difficult. You start off with the ability to regenerate your health if you retreat back to the room, which is like your apartment that you're locked in, and you can only escape through a hole in the wall that takes you to all sorts of wonderful places. But you can retreat there and get your health back. But then in the second half of the game, your apartment, your room starts to get possessed and weird things happen there, and you no longer regenerate your health. So our get out of jail free card for when we got wounded is now gone, and coupled with the tough combat difficulty, the confusing level design, the not so fun gameplay as it was in the first 2 Silent Hills, we're starting to burn out a little from our Silent Hill aspirations. But I bought all the games in the series, so we're going to get through them one way or another. More on that when I actually beat that game one day. But that has been my gaming goals for the week. What have you been up to?
I finished Greedfall! Yay! I even got a different ending. I may have saved right before the end. and reloaded and made a different choice.
But did your original ending, was that like your true
That's my
ending?
canonical ending.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
I think I got a pretty good ending as far as like doing what a diplomat should do and make peace.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say anything else because it seems a little spoilerish to go into too much detail. But yeah, I really enjoyed the story. I mean, the game does have its flaws, but you know, as far as telling a compelling story and good pacing in that area, I think it does its job well.
Cool. It's just a shame the gameplay doesn't match up. Is that what you're saying?
There's definitely room for improvement in that area, but for a smaller, lesser-known studio, you know, it's a solid entry. So good job, you guys.
All right, so out of 10,
Hmm?
I need to know what you rate this game. Now that
Overall?
you have actually finished, overall score out of 10.
8.5.
8.5. Nice.
Room for improvement for sure, but still very fun, solid game. And, you know, it ticks a lot of my boxes as far as customization and being able to create a character and having specific things. I mean, it is a little frustrating that even if you do play as a girl, that some of the dialogue isn't changed with the NPCs.
Yeah, I think that was just an oversight.
That's a bit of a game-breaking thing.
So overall, did it scratch the Dragon Age itch that you have had? Absent in your life, no new Dragon Age games for years. You saw Greedfall trailers only a few months ago. You didn't have to wait long for the game.
No.
Did it scratch that itch?
A little, but
Oh.
it wasn't quite as, like, BioWare still has its BioWare feel. It's hard to,
Does it?
well, those games, when I go back and replay it, like, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm looking back on it with rose-colored glasses, but it feels like those relationship aspects have a little more depth to them. You have, like, one or two things that are maybe, like, special scenes when you do like max out a friendship and then choose a romance with a particular companion.
Yep.
Whereas in BioWare games, there's a lot more little interactions, and it drips feed throughout the entire game. Whereas this one kind of shoehorned it in a little bit here and a little bit there, and then that was it. So that to me felt more like, I guess, other more like story adventure games that we've played that have a little bit of those elements in. So it's a good start.
Yeah. If they made a sequel that was focused more on those things, you'd probably enjoy it more.
Oh, I still enjoyed it, but yeah, it wasn't quite to that same level. So, but then you've got other people that are very different from me who like would have probably been very sick with too much conversation and too many cutscenes and things like that. So, you know, I think I'm probably in the minority of people that really enjoys that aspect.
Different strokes for different folks. How long did this game take you to beat? Do you have an estimation? Do you have a solid idea?
I think it was about maybe 40 hours.
And you did a lot of the extra content, side quests?
Yeah, I did. I think the only thing I didn't get was find there's like a doctor or like an explorer who'd been to the island before you, and you were tasked with finding all their like left behind letters scattered around.
Well, you're a diplomat, not a postman.
I was supposed to be helping out like one of the people that works at the court who's like gathering documents and stuff like. Well, that was the excuse for that kind of side quest anyway. That was the only thing I didn't do. Like I found some of them, but I wasn't deliberately hunting them down. I'm like, I can't be bothered.
Cool.
So, otherwise, I think that was one of the things I praised about the game last time was that all the side quests felt relatively important, not, silly.
Yep. Not mundane and useless and just there to pad out the game.
Yeah. Even establishing camps, which you're going to do automatically anyway because it just makes fast travel easier. But they give you a legitimate reason to establish camps because you help doing like the mapping of the land to then make it easier to start building roads and stuff for merchants and the like.
Yep.
So it was nice to have those little details thought out.
Now, Desade really does get away with a lot in this game because you're tasked with finding these campsites. Find out good places to set up camp.
Mm.
Did you notice that all the places you set up camp have already got a pre-existing, like, campfire set up? So it's like copying someone else's homework. That's not fair. That's not morally pure. He's been copying campsites. Oh, dear.
Well, Desada has a lot more to worry about than stealing someone's former campsite, let me tell you. Oh, the drama. So much drama. And there are many times that you really don't like your allies. You kind of have to put up with them. But there is a lot more to them than meets the eye. So even if they irritate you at first, which they really do at the beginning of the game, they're awful. But as you progress, there are some like elements that are a bit of saving grace, I guess. So, yeah. I don't want to say too much more because you're still in very early stages of this game.
We don't like to get too deep into spoiler details or anything of the main story twists and turns. But as far as if it's worth playing, what like the style of game it is, we'll discuss those things freely.
Totally. And I think if you love RPGs and action, like if you're happy to play that kind of game, I mean, the combats can be a little clunky. It can be a little too easy at times. There's a few little flaws, but if you can overlook that and you can appreciate that the job of the character you're role-playing is a diplomat, it doesn't mean you can go rogue and tell everyone to stick it, then you'll appreciate it a lot more. So, yeah, I would recommend it for anyone who does love good stories, good RPGs, and that kind of style of game.
Just quick question. Are you going to go back and do another run through Greedfall, or will you be moving on to another main project?
I won't do a replay right away. Down the road, because there's still plenty of trophies to pop. So if I'm in the mood, I might do another fresh playthrough, but this time as a guy. Like, I like doing that with RPGs like this, where my first playthrough is me kind of integrated into that fictional world, and my second playthrough is playing totally opposite to that.
Just like a role-playing, this is this character's run.
Yeah.
Not so much, this is me. What would I do?
Exactly. So this time around, like, when I do get to it, there's no rush, but, you know, if I pick the game up in another year or so, I'll make totally different choices and get to experience the game from a different point of view. So that could be fun.
Well, I've been light on my gaming goals outside of the Sega Master System, I was going to say. Woohoo! Wrong console. But I have noticed that not only have you been beating Greedfall, there's been some Fire Emblem as well.
Yes, haven't beaten the New Game Plus of that yet. I haven't even gotten to the halfway mark, but I'm enjoying it.
And more importantly, the sensation that's sweeping the nations,
The world.
I have heard quite a bit of angry goosing happening from the other room as well.
Having so much fun. I'm taking my time with it. I'm so not rushing through these levels. I'm just enjoying it. I'll get so stuck on like one task. And I'll be like, you know what? Let's just muck around and do things and see if something like triggers a light bulb moment of, oh, that's how we do this.
Untitled Goose Game has been #1 on the Switch eShop in pretty much every nation now.
Yay.
That's very nice to see. Congratulations to House. They have made a absolute gem of a game. Even as recently as this past weekend, Blink 182 shouted out Untitled Goose Game during one of their performances. So
random.
it is penetrating through pop culture itself.
Yep.
The Untitled Goose Game. If you haven't played it yet, get on it.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be left in the dark.
We've been showing it to everyone. We're like, have you seen this game? You need to play this game.
And almost everyone who sees it says
That it looks really fun.
yes. And it is.
Yes, it is. Some older friends of ours were like, why would you play as a troublemaking goose? I'm like, why wouldn't you?
Some people relate to the goose.
Oh, I really do.
Just want to vent in society and cause a bit of trouble. But there's the good brother Mr. Steve said that if he was in this game, he would probably be the farmer who wants to wring the goose's neck. So
I wonder if that sums up our friendship. Me driving poor Steve nuts over the years. So at the moment, I'm on the level where there's the bar And it was very fun to pull a bit of Metal Gear in the cardboard box. Get carried in.
Metal Goose Solid.
So that has been my gaming week. So now that I've finished one of my big projects, I'm at that bit of a void of, what do I do with myself? I don't know what to do with myself. So we'll figure that out. But in the meantime...
Well, gear up, darling. We've got 42 games to talk about.
We need to time ourselves.
We are heading back to the 90s.
Woohoo.
So grab your cool linguistics. Make sure you use terms like radical, tubular, bodacious is accepted as well.
Whatever.
Get your parachute pants on. We're going to the 1990s, or potentially even late 80s with some of these games, as we discuss our time with the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis Mini.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at BrendoGem. That's BrendoJem. Last week, the challenge was set after giving you your anniversary present of the Sega Mega Drive Mini with 42 games. I was like, yes, let's make you play them all. Because initially you were going to drip feed it over the course of a few weeks, but in October, spoiler alert, we're going to make Brendo play lots of scary games.
Spooky month is upon us, and although I couldn't give two shakes of a two-tailed fox's tails about Halloween itself,
Halloween! Sorry,
I do like to play my spooky games in October. It is spooky month coming up, so gaming goals had to sort of be structured around that. We don't have time to drip feed these 40 plus 2 games.
No. It's a good thing that a lot of old games like that are usually pretty short.
The games in the Sega Mega Drive Mini, I will be saying Mega Drive because that's what it is listed as.
And it's what's on the box.
It's in everywhere outside of the US, basically. In the US, it was called the Sega Genesis, and after many years of having a Mega Drive, having a Master System, hearing about this console that Sega had called the Genesis, I got excited because I thought it was a new console. I thought something else was coming out, and it wasn't. The games looked awfully familiar.
Yep.
A bit disappointing.
Genesis is a cool name, though, for a console.
It is, even though it was not technically the first one, which raises more confusion.
That is true.
42 games, which is, coincidentally or not, double the amount that the Super Nintendo Mini had. They had 20 plus 1.
Oh.
Literally advertised as 20 plus 1. This
Good
one's
grief.
advertised as 40 plus 2. It's true.
And the next one that comes out will be, 60 plus 3?
It could be 60 plus 4 for the 64.
Oh,
How perfect would that be?
snap.
Before we talk about the games themselves, just a quick little talk about the hardware, the menus, the software, the settings. There are so many little nostalgic gems with this. The controllers are life-size Mega Drive controllers.
Yep.
Which feel a bit boomerang-ish.
They look like the batarangs you throw.
And the actual unit itself, just like the Nintendo mini consoles, like the mini PlayStation, it is a scale model smaller. But this one has cartridge flaps. So you can pretend to open and blow air out of it.
Open, shut them, open, shut them.
It even has a little panel you can take off the side for one of the add-on, like a Mega CD to go in.
Yep.
In Japan, you can even buy a Mini 32X and a Mini Sonic the Hedgehog and a Mini Sonic and Knuckles to stack up and make the little tower of power that used to be able to be made with all of the weird, completely unnecessary and basically company-breaking additions that they made to the Genesis instead of actually making proper new consoles. But it's pretty great. We have music in the menu from a legendary sound designer from the Mega Drive Genesis era who worked on the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack. He's made new music for the menu. You can change even your language and settings and change the art style to reflect on the boxes the art style of that region.
It's not just the boxes, though, because one of the games that we did that to actually changed the language of the games and the graphics and some of the characters in the game. I mean, it was mostly aesthetics for, what's it, Puyo Puyo.
As we get through these, there are a few games that have some regional differences, and some are very helpful, some are very interesting, and one's a little weird. So look forward to that. The good thing is, with the list of games, you can sort them by genre, alphabetically, how many players can be involved, and Jem volunteered her time to help me test out quite a few two-player games as well, which, let me tell you, if young preteen Brendo had one aspiration for his future wife, it is that we could play Sega games together. And
that she would kick his butt at fighting games.
No,
Yep.
Can we mark that for edit, please? That's completely unnecessary. Some of the genres are a little more abundant than others, so we'll start with the more skinny ones. And as far as the racing games, there's one.
Oh my goodness, and it was so annoying.
There's no sport games, which surprised me when I saw the list of games, especially after things like NBA Jam and things like of that ilk were such iconic Mega Drive games. The only game that you have that resembles anything sporty is Road Rash 2 by Electronic Arts.
Oh my goodness, that was so annoying.
Annoying?
It was annoying because if you had like a spill, you had to run back to your bike. And you made me play this one.
Jem did some road testing of this, and yes, if you crash your motorcycle during the race, you do have to run back to the bike to start again.
I had to run so far.
The faster you go when you crash, the further you get thrown, and the longer it takes to run back.
And it's a strange thing. I thought, like, oh, I've basically lost this. Like, it took so long to get back to the bike and to catch up. But I ended up in third place. Which was really surprising. I'm like, how did I catch up so easily?
Well, other races can crash as well, which works to your favour. But it was the first level of the game, so don't expect too much from the difficulty early on. What I find interesting, though, is that as you're running back to the bike, you still have rear view mirrors that operate. So he must have them equipped on his helmet, I suppose. Road Rash is more than just a racing game. However, you can kick and punch and swing baseball bats at the other races because
why not?
Win by any means necessary, I guess. The art style is before the days of polygons and 3D graphics, so the flowing road up and down is done by a bit of trickery with multicoloured pixels. It does its job, but it doesn't age particularly well.
No.
And I didn't really enjoy playing Road Rash 2. I had Road Rash on my Master System. You'll hear that a lot on this list. I had a version of this game on a Master System because I had that console for a lot longer than I had a Sega Mega Drive growing up. So there will be quite a few games on this list that I have played a version of, but not this version of, which is why it is even cooler that I can get it now.
What's next?
Puzzle games. There are three, or I should say there's 2 plus 1 puzzle games.
Yep.
Because one of the bonus games of the 40 plus 2, this is becoming like a maths podcast now. We have 2 normal puzzle games that were released on the Sega Mega Drive and one that has never really seen the light of day until now. We have talked about it in the past, it is no secret, but that special game is Tetris. And we played together the version of Tetris that has not really ever been played by many people at all in the past 30 years.
I forgot how stupidly fast Tetris gets when it's basically trying to kill you off so that the game ends.
Yep.
I'm like, I love marathoning games of Tetris. I like to be able to see if I can play for a game for like an hour and just survive. I had forgotten that in my childhood, it really came down to superhuman reflexes and, it gets near impossible when it starts speeding up because especially when you've got games that were built for arcades, the whole point of them getting ridiculously hard is to try to force you to, die so that someone else will pay to play, So there was a bit of that in there, but it's basically Tetris in its oldest, purest form.
If you've played Tetris, you know what to expect. It's exactly as you would think it would be, but it has lovely backgrounds like Stonehenge and a beach.
I'm so not looking at those backgrounds. I am focusing on the shapes.
Well, what you did notice is that when you beat me, and yes, in our Tetris head-to-head showdown, you did beat me. You beat me in all statistics that matter. You got a higher level than I did. You beat me by 1 line, but your score was notably higher than mine. And you got a gorilla. on your side of the screen.
It's like, what the heck is a gorilla doing there? I don't understand.
Bit strange.
Very strange.
Bit strange. The other puzzle games, are you happy to move on from Tetris?
Yep.
The other puzzle games, one that I had on the Sega Master System was Columns.
Yeah.
A match 3 duel, like it's the grandfather of Bejeweled,
Yes.
basically.
A little slower paced.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And it was one of those ones like when we started playing, I was trying to just make lines either vertical or horizontal. I didn't realize you could do like diagonal matches.
Yep.
And it wasn't until because you kept sending junk my way and then when I started popping things and things started collapsing, that I kept seeing all these like vertical matches like help me lower my things. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I've been playing this all wrong.
Back in the day, I did not enjoy Columns as much as other games like Sonic, like Wonder Boy, because I liked the action style of games. But my mother and my older sister both loved playing Columns, and when I would play against them, I wouldn't care about the risks that I took. I would immediately start my round by just slamming down walls upon walls of blocks and leave a gap and hope that I would chain together an enormous chain reaction that would either win the game or lose the game instantly for me. And that was my strategy. I tried a minor version of that, which did work to my advantage, and I did win our Columns head-to-head showdown.
I think I lasted longer than you, but points overall.
I almost doubled your points.
Yes.
So I took the risky play.
Yeah, whereas I'm slow and methodical in a lot of these, and that really hurt me in the next puzzle game. We mentioned Puyo Puyo, but it went by a different name for the Western release.
That's right. It's made its way back into Western culture now, Puyo Puyo.
Yeah.
We have a copy of that on the Nintendo
Puyo
Switch.
Puyo Tetris.
That's right.
I love it.
And obviously, if you're going to market a puzzle game in the West in the 90s, it needs Sonic the Hedgehog affiliation. Even though Sonic's not technically in the game, but Dr. Robotnik is. It's Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Mm-hmm. One of my favourite puzzle games of all time. It is Puyo Puyo reskinned with the characters from the 1993 Sonic the Hedgehog low-budget cartoon. There were two of them. And it has a weird Dr. Robotnik design, but it is still fun, and it is one of the games that if you do change the region of your Sega Mega Drive, you can play the full version of Puyo Puyo, which is like, so maybe it's 40 plus 1 plus 2 games in this compilation.
Yeah.
This is getting out like an algebra class by the time we're done. I have always liked Puyo Puyo, even though I didn't know I liked Puyo Puyo, because I liked Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. I've played it so many times over the years. I played it on my Mega Drive. I played it on the Sega Gems collection and things like that.
Didn't you play an iteration of Puyo Puyo in Super Potato in Tokyo?
Yes, I did indeed. In Akihabara?
Yeah, that's where the main Super Potato is, where they've got the arcade level like at the very top.
Yep.
And you actually gathered a bit of an audience, I believe.
Look, not to brag, but I'm pretty good at chaining together combos in old Mean Bean / Puyo Puyo. You enjoy it, but you don't like playing against me.
No, because you've had years of experience. I only discovered Puyo Puyo when we got Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Yep.
That was legit my first ever time playing it. And I'm like, how do you play this? And you're like smashing me. I'm like, well, okay.
You basically have to match 4 blobs together of the same colour. If they touch, they explode, and everyone's happy.
And you can get those chain reactions, and then the junk that gets sent to your opponent is like crippling.
I try to work multiple moves ahead so I can make a chain reaction, which means that all these clear blocks go to Gem's side, and she's not happy with me, and I probably should have gone easy on her. So overall, out of the puzzle games, I mean, Road Rash was unopposed, so it won best racing game / worst racing game. Doesn't matter. Puzzle games, I'm giving the nod to Mean Bean Machine because I like it the best. But what was your thought? What do you think was the best puzzle game of those 3?
I actually really liked Columns.
Oh, did you?
I did.
I didn't expect to hear that.
It felt very nostalgic for me. I played something kind of similar aesthetically, and I can't remember what it's called, but it was on our old PC growing up. And I just remember playing that a lot and seeing my mum play it a lot, and I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was similar. It didn't do the diagonal thing, I don't think. But it was a lot of similar dual-ish looking puzzle games.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I think that love of that has carried through my whole gaming life.
Yeah.
To the point where it drives you nuts because I'm always got them on my phone and my iPad.
Play a real game, damn it. Next genre we're going to talk about is fighting games. I mean, the early 90s is where the fighting game genre really took off. Spearheaded by two main games, Street Fighter 2, which is included,
Yes.
and Mortal Kombat, which is not. And that actually really surprised me because Mortal Kombat, especially for the Sega side of things where you had full blood and decapitations and impalements that the Super Nintendo never had, if you had Mortal Kombat on a Sega, you were the coolest kid in the playground. I didn't, and therefore I wasn't.
Yes, it was definitely the edgiest thing at the time. It's an interesting thing. I don't know if it was a choice of it getting left off or if that was just not being able to get the licensing. There's a lot of issues that go on legally.
There are quite a few licensing issues. Some developers don't want to give it out because then they're like, well, now we can't release a HD remaster of Mortal Kombat 1 if we want to. There's other games that are missing, like Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, which have a whole legal issue with Michael Jackson, of all people.
That's so weird.
But back to the fighting games. 3 fighting games included in the Mega Drive Mini. We played all 3. You beat me in all 3 because I can't seem to beat you in a straight-up fighting game. Especially since you discovered that you can hold the controller flat on your lap and play it like an arcade machine.
Oh, when I discovered that, I'm like, this is so much better. Sometimes my thumb gets worn out with normal, like, modern controllers for fighting games because it's just moving around so much. And maybe I should try that with a modern controller, like laying it flat and tapping it instead.
Well, I think the D-pad on the Mega Drive fits so well with fighting games. It flows nicely for quarter circle movements. I enjoyed using it. It is not a 6-button controller, which is what the Japanese version of this mini console has, which is so much better for fighting games.
Yeah.
But you can buy them here. Third party, there's officially licensed ones. That's not really critical for my enjoyment of this, but, you know, we take what we can get.
Depends on what kind of gamer you are. If you're really into the fighting games and that's how you play, then it's nice to know that you can find an alternative.
Yep. Starting off the fighting games with the trash tier, Virtua Fighter 2. Virtua Fighter is a good series, and graphically, when it launches on like the Saturn and later Dreamcast, later all these other consoles, it's a good fighting game series. But when they decided this polygon graphics looks great, but we'll make one on the 16-bit Mega Drive and pretend it has polygon graphics, but it doesn't actually. And the one thing we noticed when we played it is agonizingly slow for a fighting game.
Yeah.
The jump is like you're on the moon.
It wasn't responsive to what I was inputting, and when you can see the difference and can almost time how long it's taking for what you've pressed to go into the game.
Yeah. It literally feels like it's running at like a third of the normal speed it should run.
Yes.
And my favourite moment from playing it was merely when you discovered that you could ring me out by kicking me off the edge of the map and instantly winning. And that was fun.
And you kept trying to do that back to me, and I like jump over you, and you're like, no, come back.
Or I jump over you and put myself right on the edge. So Virtua Fighter 2, I didn't really enjoy. That gets a big X over the top of it for me. And then we went straight from that to Eternal Champions, which was a lesser-known fighting game. But once we moved from the agonizingly slow Virtua Fighter 2 to Eternal Champions, it felt like we'd hit the fast-forward button.
Yes.
And we were playing like Grease Lightning.
Yeah, hyperspeed. It was good, though. I think the fast graphics and faster movesets suits a fighting game.
Oh, yes.
It makes it look way more fluid, and, you know, I think it also adds to the tension of, like the back and forth and action so fast you're almost struggling to keep up with it kind of thing, and it makes it more fun to watch as well as play.
I've always liked fluid, fast-paced fighting games, but I didn't realise how important it is to the enjoyment of the genre before we went from the agonisingly slow to the super fast.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, this is so much better. I don't even know this game. I've never played it before. The roster of fighters don't even look that interesting. I was like a detective dude with a grappling hook. You were the stereotypical sexy girl with the ballet foot.
I don't know why she kept like standing on her, like, it wasn't both legs, it was just one where she always had to be on her toes. Like, okay. That's one thing I've always had that gripe about fighting games, is the way that the women are pretty much always dressed is a little infuriating. And that's pretty typical of I know it carries across more than just fighting games in video games, but yeah. So, like, you want to play as the girl, but at the same time you're like, okay, I'll fight as a guy so I can wear some more clothes.
Yeah. In 2019, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is outdated. It is unnecessary.
Not as a child, though.
1992, Brendo was going, show me those thighs. That's so cool. Look, it's so sexy.
Oh, pixelated skin.
Oh, no. And
Sorry.
And basically, never in doubt, the best fighting game in our experience on the Sega Mega Drive Mini, Street Fighter II Special Championship
Definitely.
Edition, with the whole roster of characters from Street Fighter II. There was so many different versions of Street Fighter II. It's hard to keep track of.
I just realised I said I like playing as guys with more clothes on, but then I chose Zangief.
Who's literally just a big hairy bear of a man in underwear and boots. But you do watch professional wrestling, so you are used to seeing that.
I know. Like, it truly doesn't faze me too much. Like, I understand from an athletic point of view the need for mobility in those situations.
That's exactly why your character did that in Eternal Champions. They just wanted the freedom of movement, of having one leg
But
out
some
of
of
her
the designs,
dress.
especially when it's like supposed to be armor, and it's not even protecting vital organs. It's like, okay.
If you haven't played Street Fighter 2 yet, well, I'm sure you've at least heard of it, seen it. You know the characters. It's an iconic, probably one of the most iconic fighting games that has ever been made. People still do tournaments of it here and now. It can be a little imbalanced. I used to play as Dalsim because he has stretchy yoga limbs and can literally like hit you from the other side of the
Is he one of the
arena.
drunken fighter style ones? Those
No.
ones are always hard to master.
No.
No?
He does yoga flame and yoga fire.
I do like Street Fighter. Out of a lot of the mainstream classic ones, Smash will always be my favourite fighting game. But I think out of all the fighting games I can think of, I've always really loved the Persona ones. I love the art style, and we love that series so much. It's hard to go past that. But that flows really well too. I know I've like derailed conversation, but yeah.
I had the itch to replay Persona 4 Ultimax Arena.
They're just
the
so
other day.
good.
Yeah.
They are really, really good.
Fighting games are great pick up and play games. People don't really need experience when you play like Gem and just button mash and beat a professional player anyway. So
Well, who's the more the fool? The person that spent time memorizing the combos to get the exact millisecond and figure everything out correctly, or the person who like beat that person without even thinking about it?
So that's fighting games. Let's move on to the arcade style side-scrolling spaceship shooters that were all the rage in the early 90s. The good thing is, with the Sega hardware, Sega used to make arcade cabinet games with these style of games, and they would translate them to their own systems perfectly. They've always done it. Mega Drive, Sega Saturn, Sega Dreamcast all had the same hardware at its base that the arcade cabinets did. So a game like, even generations later, Crazy Taxi, you would play on an arcade machine and it would play perfectly the same on your home console. Soul Calibur is the same. And even back in this era, we had several. There are 4, I believe, on the Sega Mega Drive Mini, and starting with the worst, a game that I just love to watch my wife not enjoy playing games, apparently, because I made her play Space Harrier 2, and it was not very enjoyable.
Was that the flying one?
It was the dude in the jetpack with the checkered square ground.
Oh, yeah.
It was basically Star Fox before there was Star Fox.
That was so bad.
It was not enjoyable. I have played a little bit of Space Harrier in Yakuza, Zero, I believe, has it?
I kept thinking that the circles that were apparently being shot at me, I didn't realise that was what they were. A lot of flying games, right? Even to this day, you will have like hoops in the sky where it's like rings that you're supposed to fly through as like checkpoints. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like stay on course, go through these hoops.
Speaking of Star Fox, that's what they have.
Exactly, and that's why I was so confused. And like every time I kept hitting them, and you're like, "Don't!" They're shooting at you. I'm like, "What? That what?" And even though I knew I was supposed to avoid them, I still kept like instinctively going for them. I died so fast.
Well, don't forget, Fantasyland has been overrun by hostile forces, and Harrier himself must save the world by fighting off the entire force single-handedly.
Well, he didn't do that with me.
Did you love the high-quality, cutting-edge voice clips included in this game?
I can't remember any voice clips, to be honest.
They consist of such hits as, "Ah!" and "Get ready." That's pretty much it. Amazing voice acting.
Actually,
Amazing.
no, I think I remember one of the clips sounding like it got cut off before they'd finished the sentence.
Probably.
And I'm like, that sounded very abrupt. So that's kind of funny.
That's not one of the games I'm going to be going back and playing anytime soon.
No.
Like I said, it's a mini game included in one of the Yakuza games. So as soon as I started playing it, I'm like, I don't think I've played this, but I think I've played this. What is happening? And that would have been why.
Yep.
Also, on the arcade shooting style, a game called Darius, which just sounds like an author's first name, but it's actually a game that was never released on the Sega Mega Drive.
It's like a Persian name?
Yes. That's probably why. It's also the name of a game that was never made on the Sega Mega Drive before 2019.
There you go.
And somebody made a port that could run on it, and they decided to use it in the Mega Drive Mini.
That's so weird.
It's one of the stranger stories. But the two bonus games that had never been released, Tetris and Darius. So there you go. Another one of the same style of you're looking side on, you control a little spaceship, you're trying to move as the screen pans across, and you shoot things. And I had a lot of those style of games even on my Atari and Sega Master System and Mega Drive. They all sort of play the same, which is why they all sort of blur into one. Space Harrier is a bit different because the camera's behind you as you struggle through an uncomfortable, unenjoyable game. But there are two other ones as well. Just quickly, Super Fantasy Zone.
Oh, what a great name.
Which was released in Japan, January 1992, released in the European territories in September of 1992, and released in North America in July of 2008.
Oh, no.
I dug a little deeper as to why Super Fantasy Zone was not released in the US, and I found the reason. And it was listed as unknown reasons.
Hilarious.
Super Fantasy Zone, another side-scrolling shooter arcade style, exactly the same as Darius gameplay-wise, exactly the same as my favourite of these games, which was Thunder Force 3, because if that's not a cool arcadey name, I don't know what is.
That definitely sounds better than the others.
They all play the same. If you enjoy that style of game, you've got plenty of options, but it's not what's keeping me here. It's not what I came here for. But overall, I enjoyed Thunder Force 3 the best out of all of those, so it gets the gold medal.
Cool.
And Space Harrier is trash. The other two sit in the middle somewhere.
We'll be back with more games from the Sega Mega Drive Mini.
The better games. Sorry for making you endure some of the less enjoyable ones. There's still a couple of stinkers in there, though, but I promise you, the quality of games will improve right after this.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side, and you could be featured in the next podcast.
I can't believe you said that there were better games than Tetris and Columns. So rude.
Well, look,
I know you love Sonic, but seriously.
I'm not telling fibs. These are true facts. There will be better games. We had some good times with the run and gun style shoot 'em ups. Different from the arcade style where you're in a little spaceship. These ones you're actually running across a world. Usually there's about 8,000 enemies coming to get you. If you've played a Contra game, you know what I'm talking about. And included in this is a Contra game, but I didn't know it was a Contra game because in our territory, apparently, it wasn't called a Contra game. And that's...
So when you hear the term Contra, I think of a very... I don't know, like, my definition of Contra as far as work in radio, that term was used a lot as far as getting free stuff. So I don't think it means the same thing in your world.
Well, it doesn't. If I hear Contra, I mean, that's talking video games. Contra is just the name of the game. It's not a descriptor. It's what it's actually called. Contra is like it's like Silent Hill. It's called Contra.
The game is called Contra. Okay.
Yes. A contra deal is an agreement between two
Contra deal.
parties who exchange goods or services without any cash changing hands.
Mm-hmm.
And in the terms of video games, it means you shoot enemies and they kill you instantly because you take one-hit kills. Probotector is the name that we got in our territory, which just sounds like some sort of half Robocop, half alien device to, you know what aliens apparently do. Probotector. But in other territories, it was known as Contra Hardcore. And by core, I mean CORPS, like Army Corps.
Core, yep.
But it's called Hardcore because that's a clever play on words.
Yes, it is.
When an unknown hacker infiltrates the city's security system and reprograms a group of unmanned robots to cause havoc, the Hardcore are deployed to handle the situation. Members include the male soldier Ray Powered, female soldier Sheena Etranzi, and Brad Fang, a humanoid-like wolf man with cybernetic arms.
Interesting.
But wait, there's one other character, and his name is Brownie. Brownie the robot. So, who would you choose out of those? I'm a fan of Brownie, I gotta say.
Does he make brownies?
He does not make brownies.
Because that would win me over.
Contra Hardcore was apparently too difficult to play in Japan. Because...
I thought you were going to say, like, overseas. But Japan, that's way worse.
Look, I'm telling you the facts here. You get one-hit kills when you get shot in this game. One shot, you lose a life instantly.
Yep.
And you get very little continues.
Mm-hmm.
The Japanese version, if you change the settings of your console to Japanese, you'll play the Japanese release of this game, in which you have a life bar and get more continues. So, apparently, too difficult for the Japanese.
So they technically have it easier than the rest of the world, and they're
Yes.
still saying it's too hard?
Yes.
That's kind of ironic.
That's why they changed it.
But they're normally, like... This is going to sound a little stereotypical, but, like, I associate both, like, the Koreans and Japanese as, like, incredibly talented gamers. So that's kind of funny.
The funny thing about the Sega Mega Drive is that I think only 10% of the consoles sold were in Japan. Like, Sega have this weird relationship with Japan where it's either they absolutely loved or the console just did nothing. And the
Like
Mega
the
Drive
Xbox.
itself was one of those ones where it did nothing. Later consoles, the ones that didn't sell well everywhere else in the world, Japan loved. And it's just kind of weird. It's probably part of the reason why Sega went under. Let's talk about another running and gunning style game, but without bullets. This is Alicia Dragoon, which was made in development with Gainax, who you may know as an animation studio, and you may have seen some of their work recently because Neon Genesis Evangelion was drawn by them.
Oh.
So, there you go. Previously, I love these little stories because previously they had only worked on things like dating sims, and this was a side-scrolling. You got a female protagonist, a nice strong female protagonist, but apparently we had to localize the contents for the Western market.
Oh, no. What did they do?
Because, look, instead of having the big-eyed, the anime-style heroine,
Uh-huh.
In America she had to be portrayed in a gold bikini.
Of course.
And she became a female barbarian instead of
Uh-huh.
a sorceress. So,
Why?
but she still uses, like, don't get me wrong, she still uses magic. So she's a magic casting barbarian instead of a sorceress witch woman. I swear it's much better. It's an improvement on
I
the
know
characters.
that there are battle mages. Like, it's not completely ridiculous, but oh my goodness.
I do like the gameplay in this one. It's not bad. You have lightning blasts that lock onto enemies. So you can basically just run and hold the attack button.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer you hold it, the weaker the lightning gets. So you have to let it recharge every now and again. She has little pet creatures that attack as well. It's very fun. But I just liked the story of how apparently anime eyes not going to sell in America in the early 90s.
If only they could see America now. I am so glad things like that have changed. Like, it is nice to see a little bit of self-awareness, like, and that people can look back and go, okay, we did make wrong calls. So...
Make her a barbarian who shoots lightning from her fingertips. It's not a traditional barbarian at all. Xena warrior princess didn't shoot lightning bolts.
I mean, it's a compelling thing, but, like, if the original is still good too, like, you don't need to mess with the formula.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways.
Now, we didn't quite have Pepsi Man back in the Sega Mega Drive days, sadly. But we did get Vector Man, which is not quite up to the same standard. Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo looked incredible graphically. Nothing we'd ever seen before in those early 90s, because they used 3D models, but then took like screenshots of them and used the pixels from the screenshot to make the characters. So they looked like they were 3D, even though they were TD sprites. 2D, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Vector Man used the same technology and used 3D graphics to create better things than you'd ever seen before on the Sega Mega Drive. It's a running and gunning sort of platform hybrid, so it's kind of hard to find where to fit this one into the scale. I didn't show you this one, but unfortunately, it's not the greatest gameplay, but it looks absolutely stunning for a piece of 16-bit technology. A little synopsis of the game. In 2049, the human population of Earth embarks on a migratory voyage to try and colonize other planets. It's just Wall-E, basically. They leave mechanical Orbots to clean up the mess they made on Earth through littering and pollution.
They should totally be like, hey, Disney, you stole our premise.
Rasta, a high-level Orbot who watches Earth through a planet-wide computer network, is accidentally attached to a working nuclear missile by a lesser Orbot and goes insane. He declares himself the ruler of Earth and renames himself Warhead and begins preparing to execute any humans who may dare return to their planet.
Oh dear.
Who put the crazy AI on a nuclear bomb?
That's a little darker than Wall-E. Although there is a crazy AI, but it's just in charge of the ship. Ooh, spoilers?
Yeah, well, we needed to know where the plot direction was going for Wall-E 2. That's it.
That's the next
Strap
thing
a
that
nuke to him.
No, Wall-E.
Now, our favourite one, you enjoyed playing this next one. My favourite, it gets the stamp with the running and gunning. Gunstar Heroes was an absolute treasure to play with you. And that's a play on words because it was developed by Treasure, who also made games such as McDonald's Treasure Land Adventure.
Oh no.
Which they had finished first. But they held back its release because they were working on Gunstar Heroes at the same time and wanted their debut game to be an original thing, not McDonald's propaganda. So thumbs up to Treasure for that one. This game was nearly rejected by publishing by Sega of America, only approved by one man, the last producer in their reviewing queue, after 12 others rejected it. And it has gone on to be one of the best received, most beloved Sega Mega Drive games of all time.
There you go.
So one guy knew what he was talking about, the other 12 did not.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the day and age, there wouldn't be many that really knew or understood what was going to have longevity.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But the game is slick. The guy who did Greenlight it did have one request.
Uh-oh.
One of the bosses was maybe just a little too similar to Adolf Hitler. So if you just change that, we're fine.
As in like in the game.
Graphically,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Not one of...
I thought you meant the person like backing the project was like him. I'm like, what? This is taking a really interesting dark turn.
And then he straps a nuclear bomb to an AI, and here we have Vector Man. Gunstar Heroes, you had a great time. You liked using the flamethrower in particular. You liked having the close range super damage, which came in very handy in our co-op run to take care of them bosses.
I figured in these kind of games I tend to get swarmed, so it's better to have like the high damage, like close quarters weapon.
Hard to find what game of that is at the bottom of the pecking order, but I find Gunstar Heroes to be at the top. And these are just the genres that I actually am not really here for. Two main ones I am here for would be platforming, because it ain't 1990s gaming without platforming, and a genre that I didn't even know existed until many years after the Mega Drive era, JRPGs. They're the two that I really enjoy. But before we get there, we have some beat-em-ups to get to. We've had arcade shoot-em-ups, we've had shoot-em-ups, we've had run-and-guns. Now we're beating them up. And the side-scrolling beat-em-up is a staple of 90s arcade console gaming.
Now, normally, our go-to for this is like Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
A game that I believe has been delisted and is now lost to the annals of time, unless you have it, which we do, and it will never be deleted from Xbox.
It's like PT.
Never deleted. We had a whole discussion about licensing issues and the threat it poses to the game industry as far as archiving things.
Yeah.
Connected note, I'm rabbit trailing everywhere. The Australian government is starting to archive not only Australian film and television, but Australian-made video games as well.
Oh, Untitled Goose Game, you're safe.
It will live on forever. Forever. That makes me happy.
Yay, honk.
I may have made a mistake while making Jem play some of these games, because I wanted her reaction to some of the worst games of the list and may have forgotten to let her play some of the best ones. And I'm hoping, just hoping, it hasn't tainted your opinion on the Sega Mega Drive. It was good, I tell you. This compilation of games is great. But I also made you play Altered Beast, which contained a very muscly man with a very small head.
I survived really long in that, and you were like, you got further in it than me.
Yes, you did. Because you were hiding up the top of the level while everyone else just walked off the screen and vanished.
Oh,
So,
hey,
nice work.
if that's a loophole, I'll use it. I found it really funny.
You get power-ups, you get more muscle bound the more you pick up, and if you get 3 in one level, you become the Altered Beast.
You
and
look
become
like one of those bodybuilders that's put way too much time into everything else, and their head is tiny.
absolutely ridiculous.
So funny.
Beyond that, though, you become a wolf creature, basically. So you didn't quite see that. But
No.
the big muscle-bound dude laying on the ground doing his yoga legs in the air was enough to keep you entertained.
Yes.
The story of Altered Beast follows a Roman centurion who died in battle and is resurrected by Zeus. The centurion is ordered by Zeus to save his daughter Athena from a demon god called Neph.
Not Hades.
Now, you may laugh at Neph, but I'll have you know that you've probably seen Neph before, because him, in his Rhinoceros Man outfit, in his Rhinoceros Man form, he was featured as a cameo in Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh.
So there you go. You laughed at Neph, but he was important in gaming culture. There you go. Altered Beast does not age anywhere near as well as anyone would ever think. It's been re-released and remastered and on digital stores and like the PS3. Don't go near it. It's terrible.
Why can't Zeus save his daughter? He's got
'cause-
way more powers than a mortal would.
Zeus has a normally proportioned head, and you can't fit into the underworld unless you have a tiny head and big muscles. That's the plan. We
lazy.
also played Golden Axe, which you enjoyed a little too much when you stole a dragon steed
Yes.
and threatened to burn all the children, apparently, of the
They were,
village.
they were running straight into the flame. They were asking for it. So that had you had 3 choices, right? Each player, it's a male warrior, the female warrior, or like the dwarf.
Yes.
And I played
Again,
as the dwarf.
they're just like pro wrestlers, basically, with
Yes.
their outfits. Undies and boots, if you're the man, a bikini for the woman, or a fully dressed dwarf.
Yes, because no one wants to see a dwarf in his undies. Anyway,
What is happening?
that was very funny. I was just having a lot of fun stealing like different rides from various villains.
You
Like
like the
they
steeds.
get knocked off really easy.
Yeah.
And I did like the magical elements as far as like if you were getting surrounded, you could use your kind of emergency button of
Yep.
whatever magic power up that your character had. And I think mine was like a dwarf version of Thor because I could summon lightning.
Using your mighty axe hammer.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Mew Mew, or whatever his name is.
Mjolnir.
Mew Mew, thank you.
Mew Mew. Is that the noise your dragon made when you petted it behind the ear?
You know, in Thor, like the first one, when he meets all the humans, and I can't remember, is it Kat Dennings' character? She's like trying to say the name of the hammer, and she's like, Mew Mew? What's Mew Mew? And that's what's stuck in my head now. I can't remember the real name.
Golden Axe is fun. I had it on the Sega Master System, but nobody wanted to play with me. Neither of my sisters enjoyed playing Golden Axe with me as a co-op experience, and so I have rightly analysed that it is much more fun playing with two-player in that game. So thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
fulfilling that after 20-odd years.
I definitely enjoyed taking control of the dragon and just breathing fire on everything. That was really fun.
You do worry me sometimes. Next game on the beat-em-up scale. I didn't know whether to put this as a platformer or a beat-em-up, but it feels more beat-em-uppy. So I decided to stick Comic Zone right here. A game that you adored the art style of.
I loved that art style. I thought that was really clever and creative, and the transitions from like moving from one cell into another were just so well done, and it looked more modern, I guess, compared to a lot of other games that were on the Mega Drive Mini.
Yep.
It had almost like some of the ways that they had designed it. I'm like, this almost feels like it was made almost now, but in the style of a retro game.
Yeah.
That's how good it is.
Yeah, it's funny how when a console launches, they're like, this is what we can do graphically. And everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. And then you go that 5 years later, and they're like, no, this is actually what we can get out of this hardware. It's happened with every generation. Even a game like The Last of Us on PS3, at the end of the lifespan, I'm like, I didn't know this could even look like this on this console. When you start with early PS3 games, every console's done it. And yes, Comic Zone, absolutely beautiful graphically.
Totally. An interesting idea of like being a comic book artist that gets sucked into his world that he's created and has to fight all the creatures that he's made. You think he'd be a little bit better at fighting them since he should know them in and out. I think that would make a little more sense. But
Thankfully, I drew them with a weakness.
I know everything about you. I made you.
It's good stuff. I've played it many times before. It has been included as a hidden bonus in some of the Sega Sonic Mega collections over the years. I still enjoy playing it. It is a bit simple and a bit one-trick pony-ish, but graphically, I love that art style. And sometimes, I know gameplay is like the most important thing for games, but there's been games I've enjoyed in the past that have had wicked art styles and maybe sound design and terrible gameplay, and I will still enjoy it.
You can think of games like Cuphead, that frankly, the main appeal of those games, especially because they're so brutally hard, is the art style.
Yes.
They're so breathtakingly fun to watch and just see how they've taken like that classic old school animation and turned it into this video game. And it's going to remain iconic for many, many years. And that's why this game, even though it's so old, still looks really good even now.
Iconic.
High praise. Not many games on this list can say that they aesthetically haven't aged badly.
Yeah. Another game that has received high praise to the point where many times is at the top of a Mega Drive game's top 10 of all time, top 50, top 100, doesn't matter. Streets of Rage 2 will quite often be up there. Another arcade transition to a home console. We played it co-op and you could not stop suplexing me. What sort of beat 'em up has friendly fire?
I know, right? We did more damage to each other inadvertently because we'd be like almost back to back trying to fight off enemies around us, and then we'd end up hurting each other. And I found it really weird that you could come up behind someone and the way they're holding it is like you're grabbing their chest.
Ready to give them a
suplex.
slam or a flip over. Yep.
And if you did that to my character, I was playing as the only girl on the roster, it looks like you'd come behind me to...
So maybe that's why I ended up being suplexed so often. It's all right, we are married, it's fine.
Why?
But yes, it's enjoyable. I love that game. Not that bit. I was talking about Streets of Rage 2.
You were.
I had a good time playing Streets of Rage 2.
I bet you did.
When I was not being beaten up and I died before you did, which yet again means you outlasted me in one of the games from my own era. Very disappointed. Yeah, I had fun playing that, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game I think I would enjoy playing more with somebody who has more of an interest in that style. Not saying it wasn't fun with you, but to play it with someone who has played that era of game, that style of game more, and they enjoy it more, I would love trying to run through that entire game.
Yeah.
The good
I get a little... If they feel a little tedious to me sometimes, like the repetition of like getting through those games. It's basically like trying to last as long as you can. And I know the same could be said for a lot of puzzle games that I love to play.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I don't mind playing for a short burst, but then I get kind of tired of it.
Yeah, the good thing about this mini console, just like the Nintendo ones and all that, you can save your game at any time and come back to it whenever you want. You can exploit a save system that's built in to the emulation, so you don't have to get to a save point. You don't have to start from the start like you did back in the day when you played a game, and if dinner's ready, well, you got to turn it off, and next time you come back, you'll be at the title screen again.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to have the option to just put it down when you get up to something good and come back to it later. Or if you're up to a ridiculously hard boss, you can plop a save down and hopefully not get stuck on it 24 times.
Mm.
So there you go. I think Streets of Rage gets the good game of the beat-em-ups.
Mm-hmm.
JRPGs, like I said, before Pokemon probably would be the first one, and Final Fantasy VIII, I suppose, for consoles. I really didn't even know what a JRPG was, and I didn't know what I was missing out on.
A whole new world.
But there are no less than 5 incredible JRPGs. Well, maybe not all incredible, but there are no less than 5 JRPGs on this list. And starting with Light Crusader, which is basically like another game on this list, but not as good, so we won't spend too much time on it. It is a isometric top-down view, which is used on another one of these games in this list.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, the game's a little bit dull, often criticised as a game being a bit too easy, and it is often unfavourably compared to other JRPGs on this list. I dabbled with it. It wasn't that great, to be honest, in my 5 minutes of playtime. This is it, though. A beat-em-up like Streets of Rage you can get a feel for in 5 minutes. JRPGs you can't. So I might be completely off with my mark with these things. I was challenged to test all of these games. I didn't get time to beat them all. It's impossible. So these are a bit more open-ended, these discussion points. What we will talk about, though, is Landstalker, The Treasures of King Noel, where you play as the most manly named hero in video game history. Think of the great JRPG character names. What do you have for us?
Snow.
Okay, maybe you're the wrong person to ask. But you play as Nigel. And this game also is a top-down isometric view, so you have what feels like 3D movement. You can go up, down, left and right, all on the map. You can see everything that's going on. It's an action RPG. It won awards at the time for being the most innovative new game, the best action RPG, nominee for best music, and won Game of the Year awards. And it has, from the short time I played with it, Landstalker has quite a sense of humour as well, which is even better. I love good witty writing. You also, on the JRPG list, have a game called Beyond Oasis in other territories, and it confused the heck out of me when people kept saying, we have Contra Hardcore, and we have Beyond Oasis. And I'm looking at my box, and I'm looking at my list of games going, did we miss out on games? We don't have this, because Beyond Oasis is called The Story of Thor on our games, where you play as a character called...
Thor?
No, Prince Ali. Prince Ali, fabulous he.
What?
Not what you expected?
No.
The Story of Thor, starring Prince Ali. It is basically like A Link to the Past or the classic Zelda game style, top-down viewpoint. You move through the map, you can go up, down, left or right, and there you go. Explore the world, but Genesis. Sega does what Nintendo don't. That was one of their slogans back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
And in this game, you can jump and you can duck. 2 things that Zelda could not do. Zelda. Look at me being the ignorant game man.
Link.
2 things that Link could not do back in the day. Prince Ali discovers a buried gold armlet, in quotation marks, which once belonged to a wizard who waged a long war against the evil wielder of a silver armlet. IGN gave the Virtual Console re-release an 8 out of 10 of Beyond Oasis, the story of Thor, Prince Ali, calling it very stylish and expressing surprise that despite a lack of polish in certain areas, its unique mechanics deserve to be mentioned along such classics as The Secret of Mana. So it is a great game that maybe I will play, and I'd never heard of before this, because as a kid, this whole genre was new to me, and since then I haven't had the opportunity to play any of these games because they were never really available or catching my eye.
So when you dabbled in all of these games this week, what did you think of that?
It does feel very much like A Link to the Past, gameplay-wise. It's like your first thought, you're like, oh, I know exactly how to play this game. It's like I've already played this style of game before. Story-wise, it's a bit lighter on the story early on than compared to some of the others. One of these games starts with, like, cutscenes, and you're like, I just want to test the game. Can we move it along a bit? But, it's the same thing. You get power-ups, you get bombs, arrows, fire swords, all the sort of things you get in a Zelda game. So gameplay-wise, I think I'd enjoy it. Even the mini SNES had a game called Star Tropics, which played very much like a Zelda game, but you were a guy with a baseball bat. So, that style of game has been around, and I think I would have loved it if I knew it existed back then. More so than a traditional turn-based JRPG, more of an action RPG. Now, out of your gaming goals, what have you been playing in New Game Plus recently?
Fire Emblem.
And there is a game called Shining Force, which is very much a Fire Emblem game without the name Fire Emblem. You have a top-down grid, and you move characters on their turn into the grid, and you attack, and when you attack, it goes to a different screen, and it has like a foreground character and a background character, and they attack, and the points go. It feels like you are playing Fire Emblem Awakening, for example. The exact same style, all the way back in the early 90s. How strange is that? And the best part is, those sort of games can be very easy to stuff up and very easy to get a game over on, but Shining Force actually never lets you get a game over. Even if the player army is defeated, the player can still recover allies and retry the battle. Your force keeps any experience points that's obtained regardless of the battle's outcome. Therefore, no game over, and the player's army gets stronger even upon defeat. Although you do lose money in the game. Just like Pokemon. If you die, you just lose half your money. But still, it's nice to know that games that traditionally of this era, very tough difficulty-wise, if you die, it's not the end of the world, is it? Just the end of your savings account. And what I'm looking forward to playing the most is Phantasy Star 4 with a PH, like fat. Phantasy Star. Retrospective reviews for this have been very, very generous with their praise. Very positive. There's a reviewer from RPG Gamer who praised the title as one of the best RPGs he's ever played, with magnificent graphics, sensational soundtrack, gripping story, incredible battle system, everything you think you would get in a Final Fantasy game, and it plays exactly the same, except your name is Chaz. That's another great JRPG name right there.
Oh, it's so 90s.
Chaz.
That is a real 90s name. I feel like that's a character you'd see on, like, Saved by the Bell.
Yep. IGN have called Phantasy Star 4 one of the most definitive 16-bit role-playing experiences, stating that the storyline and characters are deep and engaging, and the attractive anime-style cutscenes steal the show visually. For a 16-bit game to have such praise, and even now with retrospective reviews giving it this much praise, I'm excited to play a different style of JRPG. And I'm not averse to playing retro JRPGs. For goodness sake, I have like the first Final Fantasy game on my PS Vita, and I still played through that. It wasn't enjoyable, but I played through it.
Well, hopefully this is a little more enjoyable for you.
Eurogamer stated it is epic in scope and recommended that anyone with a fondness for JRPGs should investigate this at once. So there you go. The definitive end of that saga of Phantasy Star, with the 4th entry in the series. But you know me,
You have to play the other
Can
three.
I start at Phantasy Star 4?
Yes, you can.
Can I?
Yes.
Okay. I need to know the history of Chaz.
Well, find a YouTube video that gives you the details and then go play the fourth. I'm sure there's one out there.
Maybe. Far and away, most of the games of this genre assortment of titles that we have on this mini console, most of them action platforming games. It's your most 90s of 90s video gaming. We're going to start with the worst of the list. Unabashedly. No, don't.
Just kidding. Don't.
Don't make me grab you from behind and German suplex you. Kid Chameleon, which just oozes 90s attitude because there's a guy you play as and he's the coolest kid at the arcade and he has a leather jacket and he has sunglasses and he's the only one who can save the world.
Isn't he like a pixelated version of James Dean?
Or in
Rebel Without a Cause.
as like an 8-year-old. Basically, it is the Dreamatorium gone wild from Community. You have a black room with white, yellow lines, just like the Star Trek holodeck. And, oh no, wouldn't you know it, this latest video game is all the rage. But the bad guy is escaping and dragging people into the game. And you have to play a terrible Mario knockoff to combat him. I did not enjoy Kid Chameleon. Probably won't be playing it again anytime soon.
Oh.
You saw it. What did you think?
Oh, it was fun to laugh at.
It was fun to laugh at. Sega Master System, I had the built-in game Alex Kidd in Miracle World, which gets so much praise, so many high review scores. I loved that game, and it was one of the building blocks of my video game career at the time. Sonic the Hedgehog, Alex Kidd in Miracle World, probably the two founding stones on which my video game started being the thing that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
I was excited to play other Alex Kidd games. I've never had the opportunity to play any other Alex Kidd games. And Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle is hot poo
Aww.
in a brown paper bag.
Like many Sonic sequels.
It's not a Sonic game. It is Alex Kidd. He was the original mascot. He's basically just a child with big ears, so I related to him on a character standpoint. You defeat bosses by playing rock, paper, scissors.
So that's where you got good at it?
This is where I played a lot of... I don't know if you can even get good. I know there's like whole psychological steps to it, but I just like to lucky dip it. But does that seem like a flawed gameplay mechanic? If you play a game and if you lose, you die, and you are beating bosses in a game that's basically a 1 in 3 chance of winning?
Well, given how bad I am at it, especially in Divinity, yes, I would be very upset.
As of the very first level, if you get past the ugly level screen that is like terrible blue with this white basic font that looks like it's made in someone's first draft of the video game title screen, you can fight a dude straight away and he's basically like, hey, beat me in rock, paper, scissors and I'll give you $500. But if you lose, you die. Would you take that deal?
No.
No? Well, I did and I won my first go, so I felt awesome. If you lose, you get crushed to death by like a gigantic weight
Oh, lovely.
that just kills you, just falls from the sky. However, that was included for the Western release. I'm loving every time I say these. And in the original Japanese, if you lose the rock, paper, scissors, you don't necessarily get crushed to death, but your clothes disappear, leaving you naked with a fig leaf. So I don't understand which is worse. Don't go near Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle. It is terrible. I did not enjoy it, which is even more disappointing because I was looking forward to it. So
Funny.
it was not good.
And what other platformers were on the Sega Mega Drive Mini?
Well, we're going to something better this time. A character that has lasted the test of time, Strider Hiryu, who is in Marvel vs. Capcom, is where I first heard of him. He's like a ninja dude, and he has had a very successful video game career in side-scrolling, slashy ninja style of combat, and it is quite difficult. But it won lots of awards back in 1990. It was the Video Game of the Year, Best Graphics in a Video Game from Electronic Gaming Monthly. and has been featured in the book 1001 Games You Must Play Before You Die.
There you go.
Its innovative, fast-paced gameplay has been cited as a major influence on several popular video game franchises. You may not have heard of Strider himself, but have you heard of Devil May Cry, Ninja Gaiden, God of War? The gameplay styles came from Strider. So there you go.
See, the name Strider just reminds me of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Aragorn.
Figured-
Strider.
I figured as much. This game was one of Capcom's big hits before Street Fighter 2 basically took them to the next level. So Strider is fun, very difficult. Very difficult. Let's talk Sonic the Hedgehog.
I knew this was coming.
And one of the most disappointing Sonic the Hedgehog games of that era, of which there are very, very few, Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball.
Is it like pinball?
It is. It's basically a pinball platformer.
Yeah. Oh, a platformer.
Because in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it was widely known that everyone's favourite level in that was Casino Night Zone, where there are pinball flippers
Yes.
and a bit of pinball plunges, and you'll land in a thing and little roulette wheel spins and the pokies go and bing, 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 bing. Everyone thought, why don't we just make a spin-off game of that? But it was done with a much lower budget and with terrible physics, but you can control Sonic mid-bounce, and overall it doesn't work that well. I played through the whole game in my charge through everything pre-Dreamcast era.
Yes.
A few years ago, I played every Sonic game that was released, every Sonic spin-off, every side game. I beat it. It's not very enjoyable, but it is something different, and yeah, it's not a good Sonic game. But then again, many of them aren't. Jim and I played something together, though, that was not what I expected it to be, because I realised where my mistake was with this game. We played the definitive 90s hip-hop, cool, funky experience of Toe Jam and Earl.
Oh my goodness.
And when I booted it up for us to play it, it was not what my foggy nostalgia memories told me it was going to be. I was lied to by my own brain.
It was so strange. I'm like, what is the premise of this game? Like, you have to find parts of the ship
Yes?
around these like weird floating islands.
No, that was Earth. That was Earth we were walking on, for
Really?
reference, yes.
But they're floating islands.
No,
You can
it's-
fall off into space.
No, it's Earth. I'm telling you. Toe Jam and Earl crash land onto Earth, and yes, they have to rebuild their funky spaceship with their funky music. It was one of the earlier examples of a roguelike style of game where each map could be randomly generated and your loot could be randomly generated. And every time you played it, it could be different. And that was originally made in the role-playing game Rogue, which is why games are called roguelikes. I didn't actually know that. I didn't know where that term roguelike or roguelite came from.
There you go.
And that was it. I learnt that while researching Toe Jam and Earl.
Learning so much.
Yeah. You're walking around on this little map. It's quite slow paced, and I thought it was a platformer for some reason, but that is the sequel, which is not on this. So I was looking forward to some 2D platforming of Return to Funkatron, Toe Jam and Earl 2. Disappointing stuff, but it does have good. The first Toe Jam and Earl game is widely received positively, praising its humour, its soundtrack, and its two-player cooperative mode, which does go from a one-screen game to split screen if you get too far away, just like the Lego games. It's ahead of its time, I'm telling you, and filled with 90s urban culture.
Yes.
So get your funk on with Toe Jam and Earl. I'll probably revisit that, but it's not what I thought it was going to be, so I was shocked and disappointed.
It was a little weird.
Little weird?
A little weird.
We were having trouble figuring out what the items were that we were
Yeah.
picking up and how to use them, but maybe some further gameplay is required.
Perhaps.
Toe Jam and Earl. What great character names. These 90s games are the gifts that keep on giving.
Aren't they?
Echo the Dolphin, however, a game I have been looking forward to playing because, A, it was too difficult for my young child brain to figure out, and B, it scared the life out of me because I didn't like underwater levels, as we've talked about in our psych assessment episode.
Yep.
And the fact that you are a dolphin who doesn't have guns, you don't have a sword, you have your bottlenose to attack with, and echolocation powers. That's scary under the deep sea. The game begins with Echo, a bottlenose dolphin, one of your favourite animals.
Mm-hmm.
As he and his pod are swimming in their home bay. One podmate challenges him to see how high in the air he can jump. Sounds like a kid's book, huh?
Does.
When he does, and he's in the air, a water spout forms and sucks up all the marine life in the bay except for Echo, leaving him alone in the bay.
Oh no. Did it suck up the water as well?
Not the water itself, but all the coral, all the clams, everything's gone.
That'd be so creepy.
And after that, it's the traditional wildlife experience you would expect, involving trips to the Arctic to find a giant whale, time travel, dinosaurs, and aliens. So, everything. So, Echo the Dolphin I will be playing because I have one of my little grudges against that game and I demand to beat it. One way or another. I don't care if I have to watch a Let's Play at the same time and mimic their movements. I'll figure it out. You enjoyed watching Troy Baker and Nolan North on Retro Replay
Yeah.
struggle and die repeatedly playing Ghosts and Goblins with Arthur the Knight and his little underpants when he gets hit and loses his armour and runs around in his boxer shorts.
Yes.
Well, this Sega Mega Drive Mini has Ghouls and Ghosts, which is the sequel to Ghosts and Goblins, in which you control the knight Arthur and proceed through a series of eerie levels and defeat a number of the undead and demonic creatures in your quest to restore all the people killed by Lucifer. No, wait, Lucifer's too offensive to Western cultures. We're going to call him Loki in the Western side. Excellent. And save the wonderful Princess Prin Prin.
Prin.
Gameplay is almost identical to Ghosts and Goblins. Ghouls and Ghosts, Ghosts and Goblins. It's confusing, it's fine. Very difficult game, but you can throw swords like lances upwards and downwards this time. So that's cutting edge innovation.
Mm-hmm.
The 90s were weird when it came to platforming mascots.
Yeah.
And we also had from Treasure as well, Dynamite Heady, where the game designer, Mr. Kimura-san, said he wanted Dynamite Heady to be commercially viable. So he wanted a main character to attack with part of its body, so he thought a puppet that could throw its own head would be appealing.
Oh
apparently.
my gosh, that's so disturbing.
After deciding to publish a localized version for overseas markets, one of the people of Sega of America was told to make the game more difficult because we don't want people to be able to beat this game when they rent it. That is why games were so difficult. The shortness of the games and the ability that you could rent them from your local video store
Yeah.
meant that people weren't going to buy them. But if they were so darn difficult that you couldn't get past the first level overnight when you played it for 6 hours, people would be more inclined to buy it, apparently.
Or, just give up altogether and rage quit.
It is a fun-looking game, though. It is an artistic style like a live stage performance, which adds to its charm. Let's move on a bit quickly now. Shinobi 3. Neo Zed is threatening the world once more. The evil crime syndicate thought to have been vanquished 2 years earlier has returned, headlined by a man known only as the Shadow Master. And there's only one man who can stop this evil Zed business, Joe Musashi. Now, if I say Musashi to you, that
I
just
want
makes
ramen.
you think of ramen because our favourite ramen shop is called Musashi. If you visit Melbourne, track down Musashi. This is not a paid advertisement. It is tied in to Shinobi 3, another tough, jumping... Stop making weird slurping noises.
I'm so hungry now.
It's creepy. I had a Shinobi game on my Sega Master System, so this is just an enhanced graphic version of the same style of game. If you've played them, you know what to expect. You like Mickey Mouse?
Yes, although in gaming, there's only like one game I can think of that isn't kind of terrible linked with Mickey Mouse and the Kingdom Hearts series.
Well, tell me this isn't a great business strategy, because in the early 90s, Nintendo owned the Western video game market, and Sega really wanted to establish their foothold in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So Before the arrival of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega had the brilliant idea to utilize Disney characters in one of their main gaming franchises at the time, and lo and behold, we have Mickey Mouse in Castle of Illusion, and it sold like hotcakes and helped Sega get their foot in the door.
Totally, I can see that doing really well in the West.
Later years, Sonic the Hedgehog became more identifiable to American children than Mickey Mouse, but it was good old Mickey that paved the way for Mr. Hedgehog.
And then Mickey came back and got his revenge.
He did indeed, no doubt. You take on an evil witch called Mizrabel, which I think is just one of the great names.
That's a clever pun. I love it.
This game is still enjoyable. I love this style of 2D platforming in this era. 16-bit graphics. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I'll play that till the cows come home. And I'm sure there's cows in Mickey Mouse's world, because there's like that weird Anna Clarabelle, whatever her name is.
And at least you know, even if the concept or the game isn't necessarily the greatest, the graphics are generally pretty decent with these games. They have to take care of a beloved, very well-known character. They can't half-heart it.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be well done.
At the time, I remember this game in magazines getting praise that it looked like a living cartoon, and what more could you ask for a mascot platformer? I love it. Castlevania, the new generation. The only game in the Castlevania series at this time, after 11 entries, to make it onto a Sega console.
There you go.
Sega Genesis. Its first one. And it's called, in other territories, another example when I thought that there was a game that was missing from my collection that other people were getting. It was called Castlevania Bloodlines. Our version says Castlevania The New Generation, which coincidentally was also a WWF slogan in the 90s. But, of course,
Star Trek.
the word blood, too offensive, kept out of the title in Western territories. I'm not even kidding.
You'd think that'd be okay in Australia.
And when the game starts, the blood on the title screen was changed to water. We may have had blood in Mortal Kombat, but apparently Castlevania is too much. They play very much like any other Castlevania game you've played. You have weapons, you have the supposed daughter of Dracula trying to start World War I and cause trouble, and you play as a guy named John Morris, which is about as bland as you could ask for, really.
Or John Smith, I think, would be a little more bland.
True. Other game series that I haven't played, including Castlevania, there's also another one that I'm sort of behind the times with because I didn't have anything that ran it at the time. Mega Man. Known in America as Mega Man, known in Japan as Rockman. What's the cooler name? Mega Man.
Mega Man.
Mega Man. I used to watch a Mega Man cartoon, and that was about as much Mega Man as I knew. But the Wily Wars contained the first 3 games on the Mega Drive for the first time ever.
There you go.
Because it was technically available in the past, but it was only available through online purchases. Could you believe it? In the early 90s. Sega Channel, if you had a cable TV station, you could download, sort of, Mega Man The Wily Wars. How strange.
I don't even think I was conscious of being able to buy things online until eBay was born.
This legitimately shocked me when I looked at it now. I didn't think that technology would have been available to even transmit anything over a cable line like that. But that's why nobody bought it, and that's why it's been in people's hands now.
They're a little too ahead of their time.
It basically never came out on cartridge, so anyone who wanted to collect this game, it was impossible, basically. So the first 3 Mega Man games, apparently they don't play as well as their NES companions, but hey, I've got 3 Mega Man games to play, and there are a slightly new content available as well. So who knows? Maybe this is the good starting place for the 84 Mega Man games that I no doubt will have to play eventually. At this point, we have 6 games left. I love them all. I will be playing them all a lot in the next coming weeks.
The reason that we got this, basically, for you.
Yeah. There are some games that I've mentioned that I'm looking forward to playing for the first time. In this top 6, there are some I've played, some I have not, and I'm looking forward to them. I'm going to catch my breath because I've been talking a lot, and I'll be back with the top 6 after this.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaming Lovers.
My dear darling, I love you so much. but I have to admit there's someone else in my life who may threaten that position at time to time. Sonic T. Hedgehog.
T Hedgehog, huh?
Is his middle name The? It's a joke on Sonic Boom, the animated cartoon series. Someone asks if his middle name is The. I think it's Knuckles, because Knuckles is dumb
Gem
as
the
a brick.
Human.
That's right. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is the best-selling Genesis game ever. No surprise there. That mascot. They wanted a mascot that could rival Mario's popularity, and hot diggity hot dog hedgehog. Why didn't I say hedgehog? Would have been better. Hot diggity chili dog. This is just Sonic fan service for myself. Anyway, they certainly got it. Sega's popularity took over and helped them take back the market share almost single-handedly. Sonic the Hedgehog did his job and made the whole console war between Nintendo and Sega even possible.
I feel like I need to point out that I never knew. Like, I did a little bit of homework this week about Sonic,
I'm scared.
and it's all a lie. Sonic, that's not even his real name. His name's supposed to be Sonny, and his nickname is Sonic because of how fast he runs.
You've been watching Polygon Unraveled, haven't you?
So
Pish posh.
all that we
Stay
know
away.
to be true.
Don't listen to her. You are a liar.
It's not
Liar!
lies.
No, it's shush. It's not important. Sonic's the best. These Sonic games are the best. Don't.
I mean, I know there are some people that are known by their nicknames more than their real names, but it's just one of those moments I'm like, what?
Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is a game that I don't mind going back to now and again, but I don't really enjoy it that much. It's a bit janky. The first level's great. The whole first world's great. The Green Hill Zone, iconic, and has been in so many different iterations of Sonic games since. But then the difficulty sort of goes weird because it goes straight from the fast-paced, this is super speed, this is how we play, to a more slow-paced, proper platforming, which that's not Sonic's strength, to be honest. I believe that's because they shuffled the world order very late in development and didn't scale the difficulty accordingly. So that's why the Marble Zone is actually quite difficult. Fun fact.
Fun fact.
I like Sonic the Hedgehog 1. I've owned it about 8 times at this point. That's not an exaggeration either. On all of its re-releases on mobile phones.
And you give me a hard time for having 2 different copies of Dragon Age.
Sonic doesn't take 48 hours to beat. It's just a quick game.
Exactly, so I'm getting more value for money.
Oh my God. You'll argue anything if it's against Sonic. Don't make me choose between you two. Might not end well
Oh, really?
for Sonic. But we can't talk about the definitive 90s platforming experiences. Unfortunately, Boogerman, the pick and flick adventure, did not make the cut. I'm so disappointed. But we did have one of my favourites from the 90s. He had all the attitude. He had all the 90s attitude you could possibly want. He had a cartoon series. He had everything. He had the whole world in his hands if he had hands. Because he didn't. He was an earthworm.
Earthworm Jim.
Earthworm Jim, who's basically, there is a sentient spacesuit that he crawls into and he gets arms and legs. And it's incredible. You can shoot. You can jump. You can use cows on catapults. You got fridges. You got all sorts of weird stuff. The gameplay is so strange. The graphic design is so strange. It's a side-scrolling adventure where stuff gets shot and you jump over holes. It's everything you could want. However, the true comedy comes from the character names. Because not only do you have Earthworm Jim, but we have Evil the Cat, Professor Monkey for a head, Psy-Crow. That's clever. It's very clever. Bob the Killer Goldfish, Major Mucus, and Queen Slug for a butt. Queen Slug for a butt.
Oh my goodness.
The main antagonist. Saving Princess What's-Her-Name from Queen Slug for a butt. What more could you ask for?
Is the princess's name actually what's her name?
Yes. Yes, it is. Did you expect anything else? From
No.
Earthworm Jim. Think it's mighty fine. Earthworm Jim. Blah, blah, blah. That was the song for the cartoons just come to me. So I used to play Earthworm Jim at World for Kids, which is a toy store that had some consoles set up that you could play, and I loved every second I could play of Earthworm Jim. If it was running there, I was so happy. I never owned it. Now I do. Now I do. Earthworm Jim.
Can finally fulfill a childhood dream.
I think you're mighty fine, Earthworm Jim. Now, of the remaining 4 games, we're almost there. Thank you for bearing with me. There are 2 that I have not played, but I really want to because I love the series. And, unlike stupid Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, they're actually good, which is so comforting to my heart. And the other 2 are games I have played a lot of, but I intend on playing a lot more of. Starting with the ones I have not yet played, apart from Alex Kidd and Sonic the Hedgehog, the other pillar of my Sega Master System gaming favourite games of all time, Wonder Boy. Not only did I have certain girls in grade 4 nickname me Wonder Boy because of my love for Wonder Boy. It's not a bad nickname, I tell you what, but once you start getting into like teenage and young adolescence, Wonder Boy is not as cool a name as you'd hope to stick with.
That's what Meg calls Hercules.
Wonder Boy? Is Hercules Wonder Boy? Is it canonical?
That's kind of her half insult, half compliment.
How dare you? How dare you? You don't insult Wonder Boy.
Just stating it. Anyways.
I played Wonder Boy at Super Potato as well on an arcade machine, the original Wonder Boy. However, the original is just basically a walking platformer. You throw hatchets. He's in like a little loincloth made of leaves. He's a jungle man. It's fine. All the other entries, though, are side-scrolling action RPGs with money and health bars and magic and NPCs and exploration and dungeons and puzzles and boss fights and everything I ever love in video games. I had Wonder Boy in Monster World, Monsterland, Monster World, Monsterland, Wonder Boy in Monsterland. It gets confusing, okay? And included in the Sega Mega Drive Mini is Wonder Boy in Monster World, known as Wonder Boy in Monster World, but in Japan it's known as Wonder Boy 5 Monster World 3. And that's not a scorecard. It's the 3rd Monster World game. It's the 5th Wonder Boy. It's confusing. Anyway, my favourite Master System game of all time, Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Crab. Leave that in. That's the most embarrassing slip I've ever made. Not The Dragon's Crap, The Dragon's Trap. It got remastered with a beautiful coat of paint recently. There's even been another game. It's called Monster Boy in Fantasyland, I don't know, something like that. But it is also taking that same style with a lovely, like, it's a new game in that series. Mm-hmm. It's come out. It's on the Switch. I want to buy it, but it's like $50, so I'm not going to buy it until it's cheaper. But right now, I have 2 games in that series that I've never touched before on the Mega Drive Mini, and I sampled them both, and they are absolutely fantastic. Wonder Boy in Monster World 3, whatever it's called, is great and plays exactly like I wish. Maybe a little slow movement-wise, but apart from that, it's everything I wanted in that series. And then Monster World 4, you play as a girl called Ash, with an E at the end. And graphically, if you look at crappy, stupid Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle and you compare it to Monster World 4, that's the perfect example of what they can get out of a console all those years later in the development cycle. Top stuff. I'm looking forward to them. And, yeah, I can't wait. I'm actually going to probably play those this week at some point because it's one of my favourite all-time series and it's 2 entries that I've never played before. So what more could you ask for? 2 games left. We played one together in co-op, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, World of Illusion.
Yes.
Oh, it's not so great a game playing solo, but when you play with a friend, my goodness, the memories. My younger sister and I used to play it together. Now my wife and I have played it together. This is just a Brendo fan service podcast now with everything that Brendo loves in his nostalgic past. Back when I was a safe young child with a stable household and everything was fine and wonderful.
Honey.
And, oh, those times just take me back to the safety of those games.
Honey.
It's fun. You
It
can
is.
cast magic on each other and turn themselves into like a twisted towel man. And Donald Duck's butt is too big.
To get through holes. That was pretty funny. I'm like, why can't I get any further? Because I was playing as Donald and you were Mickey.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm stuck. And you had to come over and, like, pull me out.
Fun stuff. You can drop ropes for each other for tricky jumps. And before Kingdom Hearts, this was a game that took influences from animated films of the Disney franchise and the artwork and the animation and the music from worlds like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty, Sword in the Stone, Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
Before Kingdom Hearts, you could take a little waltz through influenced worlds.
Mm-hmm. They weren't direct copies, I think, to save on other licensing issues.
Yeah.
Like the Mine level kind of has the Mine song from the Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, but it is not the Mine song. It's like a weird
like an
knockoff
homage
version. So I thought that was kind of cool.
I
Has
thought it
that
was very
feeling of nostalgia even if you'd never played it before.
And it plays very well. There are other Disney games that I do wish had made the cut, like Donald Duck's Quack Shot, which is basically Indiana Jones' Donald Duck.
Oh.
Good stuff. One of the best platformers ever. But number one, the game that I have played probably the most out of all of these games on the Mega Drive Mini, the game I well may play the most of in the future tense, is...
Tetris.
No, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, one of my favourite Sonic games of all time, the second best selling Mega Drive game of all time, behind the first Sonic, so they definitely led the charge, and a major factor in making sure that Nintendo's market share shrank worldwide. So Sega ended up with 40% market share by the time Sonic the Hedgehog was done. So coming from a zero, basically, that
That's
was
impressive.
a big charge.
Yep.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is everything I love about Sonic, but so much better than the first game. It's faster, it's more vibrant colours, the music's a banger. There's so many worlds, and they are all enjoyable to play. There are characters, there are creatures, there are robots, there are the best boss fights you could imagine because it's Sonic the Hedgehog and Eggman has some of his best there. It's so done. Stop looking. No. You have to have the same enthusiasm I do for Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
I really don't, though.
It even has a two-player mode that I did play with Jem once in our married life, and she didn't enjoy it, and I told her to never play it again. So
You did make me play a level, though, on the Mega Drive Mini.
Mm-hmm.
I died.
The spin dash is fun. Though. Well, you
kept
went
doing it.
left. You don't go left in an early Sonic game. You go right. Only right. That's not true. But I love Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's my favourite pure 2D Sonic game, I would say. And it's included, and I can play it on an actual hand controller business. I'm all for it. 42 games. You set me a difficult task to not just go, and this is a JRPG, and this one's platformer, and this one's a beat 'em up, and this one's this, and this one's that. I wanted to make as much information and effort in 7 days to sample 42 games and research them. I hope I've done a good job.
Were there any
Someone praise me.
surprising entries, like games that you replayed or had played for the first time that you didn't expect to enjoy as much as you did?
Castlevania was pretty fun.
Yeah.
In my, I was trying to sample these all just like 5-minute sessions to start with. My Castlevania session, I think, crept up to about 20 minutes. I didn't even notice. So that was a lot of fun. But I had heard of that. Toe Jam and Earl just disappointed me because it wasn't what I thought it was. It must have been the sequel that I thought I wanted to play. I got it all wrong.
So there's a few on there that you probably will never play again, and there's definitely plenty that you will be spending a lot more time on. So
Yeah. My biggest surprise was probably Gunstar Heroes. I really enjoyed playing that when I sampled it. I enjoyed it even more playing with a friend. A very good friend, a wife even. But yeah, out of all the surprises, that was probably number one of how slick and fun that was to play.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. And now that I've played all those games, I'll probably never touch it again because you've burnt me out.
Well, you can go and enjoy some scary games. How about that?
Ooh, Spooky month is here.
Uh-huh.
October.
Yep.
Wowee.
Uh-huh.
Let's jump straight to it because
Let's get into that.
I got to get my focus on. If it's spooky month,
Which scary games should you play?
I will be completely honest with you, my dear. This will not be a backlog busting month. This might be a backlog adding month. Because I listen to our own production. Yes, I'm that much of a fan of the Gaming Lovers that even I listen to the Gaming Lovers podcast. I
Fan or
re-listen.
narcissist?
Fan or narcissist, did you say?
Yes.
All right, maybe a bit of both. I listened to our top 10 spooky games, top 13, whatever it was, from last October.
Oh, yeah.
And I said then that I was too afraid to play Resident Evil 7.
Oh, in VR mode.
The problem is I didn't know if I wanted to play it in VR or in normal.
Yep.
You only get one first go through a game, but I don't want it to be tainted by motion sickness or things like that. So probably I'm just going to go normal.
You could play like the first opening bit in VR just to get the feeling of being surrounded and the spookiness. Then once you start feeling ill, you put it down and play normally.
No, you can't jump and change and
Yeah, you can. You can make your own rules. This is life.
Lies. Don't challenge me to it or I'll have to do it. I don't want to.
We've got a mate who has VR you could borrow.
I got myself so mentally worked up about Resident Evil 7, I still haven't played it. And I think it's a scary game from what I hear, but I don't think it's that scary. And I've just worked myself into a flurry. So I will be live streaming.
I need audio at the very least of you as well, freaking out as you play.
I'm going to be live streaming. It'll be on YouTube. You can extract the audio.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 7, over the course of October. Might be early, might be late. But I'm also going to try and live stream with my good buddy the Falcon and play Man of Medan from the makers of Until Dawn, a cooperative horror experience.
Okay, I know that your good buddy doesn't like being on camera, but I still want to hear your nervousness and your nervous laughter, so the microphone has to be on. Is that fair?
Even if he doesn't know it, I'll leave it on.
I'm pretty sure he listens to this podcast, so that won't work.
Drats. I'll convince him it'll be fine.
I just want to hear you two scream.
It'll be girly screams.
Yes, exactly.
So there are our 2 goals for October. Maybe we'll try and beat Silent Hill 4 as well if I can get through that slog. Mm-hmm. But the rest of my gaming is probably just going to be handheld stuff and Sega Mega Drive stuff. Mm-hmm. So that sounds like a good idea for the next 4 weeks. I sort of have a goal.
Nice.
A gaming goal. The big question, though, is how much have I talked in this bloody episode? But secondly, what are you going to play next? You have beaten Greedfall. Uh-huh. Your eyes have been locked on that game for months. You've played it for weeks, and now it's done. Are you going to move on straight away? Are you going to replay something? What's the plan? What's the gaming goals? We have to know. Jem, the people want answers.
For now, I know I'll definitely still be playing through my New Game Plus Fire Emblem 3 Houses.
Yep.
I still haven't technically beaten Untitled Goose Game. So if I want some casual gaming, then there's that too.
Good.
So the Switch is like my most used console at the moment, which is a little weird for me.
It's taken over.
Yes. Normally it's the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some games coming out soon.
Oh, we're in the October-November region. There's going to be games coming out every week that we're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty much the countdown to Christmas is basically on. So there might be something new that pops up where I go, oh yeah, I was waiting for that. And I'm blanking really hard at the moment.
Mm. Well, I have no shortage of ideas if you do want to join me in Spooky Month as well. So if you have a scary game that you want Jem to play,
no,
at Brendo Jem on Twitter for the official challenge, which cannot be revoked.
No. No.
Well, this has been a marathon episode talking about 40 plus 2 games.
Mm-hmm. How's your jaw feeling? Bit
I'm
tired?
zonked. I enjoy talking about them though. That era is just, oh my gosh, I love 16-bit gaming. It is my safe gaming place and I love my gift so very much.
I'm glad.
Thank you so much.
I'm very, very glad.
You got me that and I've used it so much and then I got you a rose gold controller and then you go and play Switch. So
hey, I did use it to play Greedfall. And I do like it very much.
Check us out on social media. You know where to find us. TheGamingLovers.com has all the links. Follow me, Hyper Brendo on YouTube. Get those notifications because my hours are weird. I don't know when I'll be playing Resident Evil 7, but you will if you have notifications enabled.
Hit the bell to get notified. Get the ding.
Ping pong.
Until next time, bye Nara.
And ciao ski.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.